to get your fix.
Are you ready? Are you ready to get your fix? Are you ready? Are you ready to get your fix? Are you ready? Are you ready to get your fix? Are you ready? Are you ready to get your fix? Are you ready? Are you ready to get your fix? Are you ready to get your fix?
With the Wicks here on this beautiful Thursday, March 24th, 2022, and welcome to the show, whether that be on Facebook or on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, do me a favor, hit the like and the share, and if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe. Both would be much appreciated. So we all know about yesterday. We had some massive announcements to make, like offensive tackle Terran Armstead signing a massive deal with the Miami Dolphins. And then the Miami Dolphins, shortly after doing so, they go out and they trade for Chiefs wide receiver Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs, in return, get 5 draft picks, a massive load for the Chiefs. And let me tell you, they are going to be just fine. All right, from the looks of it, they're going to be just fine. Now, from looking at it from the outside in, kind of like glancing over, the Chiefs got rid of Tyreek Hill, automatically you're going to assume, Chiefs are going to fucking suck. That might not be the case. Okay, you got to realize that they got a shitload of draft picks. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. The Chiefs are going to be just fine. The NFL draft location for next year's draft, the 2023 NFL draft, has officially been announced. We'll talk about that briefly, kind of give my 2 cents and my 2 thoughts on that. Briefly, basically. Okay, not going to really dive into it a whole lot, just to tell you there's location for next year's draft. This year's draft is currently in Las Vegas, I believe. Last year's was in Cleveland, so I'm excited for the draft, obviously. That's where we get to see stars, really complete their dream, or not really complete their dream, but get to live out their dream of being a National Football League player, an athlete, a professional athlete. So that'll be exciting. The Green Bay Packers also locked up a tight end for at least another year, and this is a move I was assuming was going to happen as more deals were kind of being made public and all that stuff. So Green Bay, they get their tight end back for another year. We'll talk about that as well. So with that being said, Deshaun Watson's situation also has to be figured out. We'll dive into that as well. So are you ready to get your fix? So we basically started this whole thing kind of talking about the Chiefs and how they're going to be just fine. And the Chiefs will be just fine. I say that with the utmost confidence. Because, yes, they traded away Tyreek Hill. Yes, they decided to release Tyrann the Honey Badger Matthew. That sounds so weird saying it that way. They got rid of the Honey Badger, okay? But they still have Patrick Mahomes. They signed Josh Gordon to another 1-year deal, give him another opportunity. This is kind of a make it or break it deal, I feel like, for him. They still have McCole Hardman at wide receiver. They still have Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darren Williams in their backfield. They also might have just got another wide receiver to replace Tyreek Hill, or fill the void, if you will. A 6'5" 5" receiver who runs a 4.3 40, absolute monster of a player. Marquez Valdes-Scantling got signed by the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a signing that was kind of expected right after Tyreek Hill ends up getting traded to the Dolphins. It was said that the Jets already had an offer on the table. They were ready to rock and roll. They were just trying to work out a way that was, or made it possible for them to kind of extend Tyreek Hill once they were able to trade for him. Then Miami kind of comes in the door, and Tyreek, being Tyreek and being a smart human being, said, "Yeah, who? The Jets? Nah, I'm going to Miami. That's where I'm going. I'm going to go play for the Miami Dolphins because they actually have something to look forward to. They actually have a chance to make a playoff run, a Super Bowl run, So, I'm going to do that whole thing instead of go up to fucking, New York and play for the Jets, who have not been good for the past, I don't know, fucking forever. Basically, since Joe Namath was their quarterback, I think he was the only one. He didn't even have a winning record for the Jets. I believe the only quarterback in Jets history to have a winning record, I think, is Brett Favre. Okay, 9-7, I believe, was his record. Maybe Mark Sanchez was close. I think he was like one game away from having a winning record, or it was like one game above having a winning record. So, the Jets, they haven't been good. And we all know that. Okay, that's literally written in bold letters. The New York Jets have never been good, ever. Okay, we all know that. We all get that. So Tyreek goes to Miami, so that means the Chiefs have to fill that void at wide receiver. What are they going to do? Are they going to go in the draft? Are they going to draft a rookie, one of these highly scouted rookies? Or are they going to go look in free agency to potentially sign one of these big-name receivers like Odell Beckham Jr., Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Jarvis Landry, Julio Jones, all these marquee receivers? Are they going to go to that area to sign a receiver? And that's exactly what they did. Right after Tyreek Hill gets traded, we all hear, MVS is in the building for a visit. MVS, by the way, is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So MVS is in the building for a visit. If things kind of go the right way, a deal is imminent. That means a deal is going to be done most likely. And that was the case. The Chiefs are signing wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling, or already have signed him to a 3-year, $30 million deal. So he gets $18 million in his first 2 years, and he gets, this 3-year, $30 million deal is basically worth up to $36 million for him. That's obviously with incentives, Pro Bowl, and all those other kind of money makers, if you will. So the Chiefs now have a pretty solid, from what it looks like, a pretty solid wide receiver room. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 6'5", runs a 4.3 740 or something like that. An absolute monster. He's quick as shit. Now he just has to figure out how to catch the ball a little bit better. We all seen it with Aaron Rodgers, how Aaron Rodgers was getting pissed that he was very inconsistent, but he was starting to kind of climb the mountain to be the legit number 2 guy for the Green Bay Packers, even though he already was the legit number 2 guy for the Green Bay Packers until Randall Cobb kind of came in the building. But I think even then, MVS was that number 2 guy. So he goes to the Chiefs. He's paired with, McCole Hardman and Josh Gordon as well. And then the Chiefs also went out and they signed Juju Smith-Schuster not too long ago on a 1-year deal as well. So they got a pretty deep wide receiver room, a pretty good wide receiver room. If you ask me, I really do like the situation in Kansas City. They're going to be just fine. You got to realize they still have Patrick fucking Mahomes. Okay, one of, probably top 3 quarterback in the NFL at this point. Tom Brady, number 1. Aaron Rodgers, probably number 2. Patrick Mahomes, probably number 3. And then Josh Allen, the list kind of goes on. Okay, I'm putting my boy Brady up there because, 7 fucking rings. But the Chiefs are going to be just fine. The game revolves around having a good offensive line and you're having a franchise quarterback. If you don't have a franchise quarterback, we know what it looks like. Okay? We all know. Vikings had to deal with fucking Christian Ponder, okay, for quite some time. And those were some rough years. Yes, we had Adrian Peterson in the backfield, but I think we all realize that you can't, rely on one guy, or you can't rely on a running back to kind of set you in the right direction. You need a quarterback who's capable of throwing the ball downfield, who's accurate as shit, and can, lead a locker room. That wasn't Ponder. We've seen in other places as well. Johnny Manziel tried to take have a try at the NFL. Okay, one of the most highly scouted or highly scouted college player coming out of college, going into the NFL. This guy was said to be the next big thing, right? Money Manziel. Now he's in the fucking fan-controlled football league for the Zappers, and by the way, he was a fucking backup. So Johnny Manziel, his career out the window. Okay, there's multiple players like this. Tim Tebow had a small stint, but Patrick Mahomes is a leader. He can throw the ball very accurately. He has a massive cannon. Okay, on Madden he has the fucking thing called bazooka because he can throw it 100 fucking yards if he really wants to. The man knows what to do. He throws at all different arm angles, in which he was not the first person to ever do so. That was, Multiple quarterbacks have been doing that throughout the years. Matthew Stafford is one that, really comes to mind when you kind of talk about all these different arm angles and stuff and no-look passes. I'm going to throw it over there opposed to, oh, yeah, here you go. So Mahomes is going to be just fine. The Chiefs are going to be just fine. And I also say that because not only did they lock up their wide receiver room, and their wide receiver room looks great. Their offensive line looks great. They land safety Justin Reed, formerly of the Houston Texans. They lock him up instead of the Honey Badger. So now their defense looks pretty solid. They'll probably draft a linebacker or something to kind of fill the void there, make their defense just a little bit better, because that was the problem early on last season. But following the trade of Tyreek Hill, okay, this is per @Field Yates on Twitter, the Chiefs now have 12 draft picks in this year's 2022 NFL Draft. No team has more. The Chiefs have 12. That's a load. That is a massive load. They own 2 picks in the first round, 2 picks in the second round, 2 picks in the third round, 2 picks in the fourth round. I mean, that's 8 picks right there. Then obviously you got the 5th, 6th, 7th round. They probably have, and then they got the, what's it called? Don't know why it's drawn. Don't know why I'm drawing a blank right now, but everyone gets like an extra, like a compensation draft pick, or whatever, because of the moves that they possibly made prior to this season or whatever. So they have 4 more drafts after four more picks after the 4th round, but they have 8 in the first 4 rounds. That's ridiculous. That means they have the opportunity to load up on receivers, or not receivers, but on players. Okay, they have the opportunity to bring in rookies for cheaper, paydays, and their salary cap won't be affected that much. They have an opportunity to build their team even better, make their team even better. I mean, the Chiefs, we know what the Chiefs have been capable of doing the last couple of years. Okay, they go to a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes, they win it. They go to another Super Bowl the year after that, they lose it to Tom Brady. They go to the AFC Championship game against the Cincinnati Bengals in a game in which they probably shouldn't have lost, but they did. That's just what the football gods wanted. That's what happened, okay? Deal with it. So they were 1 game away from the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are so good, okay? But getting these draft picks, it makes it so that in the future, the Chiefs actually have a chance of being a dynasty, if you will. And it's so hard to build a dynasty in the National Football League. And the Patriots did, or had a dynasty for 20 years. The average span of a dynasty in the NFL, I think it's like 3 years, 4 years, or something like that. It's not long at all. But the Chiefs are trying to protect themselves. Yes, Tyreek was a massive asset to that Chiefs organization. Okay, he brought a lot of upside for him. But he runs one route. That's go long, basically, because he's going to burn by everybody, okay? And then he does a bunch of motion and all that, but he's going to fucking ultimately go as far as he can, as fast as he can, and make plays. That is what Tyreek Hill does. But the Chiefs are trying to build for the future. They're not trying to build for now, because they've been so close every single year since they won that Super Bowl. And they'll win another one eventually. But with that AFC, how stacked it is, how stacked that division is, let alone, I mean, it is going to be electrifying to watch. It's going to be fun to watch. The Chiefs are going to be just fine. I mean, they're just fine, folks, okay? And also, speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, the 2023 NFL Draft has announced its location, or its location has been announced. That'll be in Kansas City. So next year's draft will be taking place in Kansas City. And the Chiefs are going to have multiple draft picks in that one as well. So the Chiefs are building up. They're bringing, the prospects to Kansas City. Hey, look how nice it is down here. You want to play in here? I mean, it's awesome. Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So next year's draft is in Kansas City. The dates are going to be April 27th through the 29th. I believe this year's is I want to say it's the 20th. I'd have to go look at it again. Can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's coming up, obviously. Okay, April is draft month. All right. So next year's draft in Kansas City. This year's draft is in Las Vegas. I was hoping next year's draft was going to be in Green Bay so that I could probably, take a quick road trip over there and sit back in the back row and relax and kind of watch it firsthand to see what it actually looks like. Probably one of my favorite drafts of all time would be where we got to see Roger Goodell in his basement, kind of sitting down, eating M&Ms, drinking whiskey, getting a little boozed up, having some fun, pretending to hug people through the screen. I mean, that was electrifying. I think the reason why it was one of the best for me is because it was a change of scenery, right? We got to see the plain Jane, how the draft is always done. You get the podium, with the first pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select defensive end out of Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson. And then he comes on the stage, he gives him a big old hug, and he holds up the jersey, like he's fucking a kid at a candy store. Shaking hands with the hat and everything. That was a plain Jane NFL draft. But then we got to see, these kids with their families just going bonkers everywhere, them crying, talking to Roger Goodell having a great old time in his basement because he's probably comfortable in his own home. I mean, it just stands out to me. So I think last year's draft, they actually brought Roger Goodell's chair from his basement to the draft to kind of sit and relax and watch and kind of do his thing there. So that was a good little teaser that they kind of brought into it. But hey, this year's draft is going to be fun. It's going to be exciting to kind of see what happens and who gets drafted and where. And we will be doing a draft spectacular or a draft show, kind of where we, where I and probably Y4 most likely, if I had to guess, maybe Logan Baumgart as well, kind of sit down and watch the draft kind of unfold, at least the first round, and have the show during that. So that'll be very, very exciting. The Colts, obviously they went and drafted Matt Ryan, or not drafted, what the hell? See, we're talking about drafting and, all this. He didn't get drafted, okay? The Colts traded for fucking Matt Ryan, okay? And, shortly after doing it, they had to pay fucking $7.5 million of his signing bonus or his roster bonus to him. The second he got off the plane, the second he signed that contract, he was owed that money. But the Colts currently have the most cap space in the NFL, which means more moves are going to be made from the Colts organization. Maybe they land Tyrann Mathieu. Maybe they land Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, maybe Jarvis Landry. I mean, there's multiple opportunities for the Colts to go out there and kind of pluck away. Maybe Bobby Wagner ends up a Colt. Who knows? The Colts have a lot of cap space, and now they only have, they actually added some. Per Field Yates says the Colts have converted about $12 million of new quarterback Matt Ryan's 2022 compensation into a signing bonus, creating $6 million in cap space. Okay, so they basically kind of took $12 million of what he was owed, okay, for his contract this year and said, here's a signing bonus, okay, $12 million, here you go. And that's actually going to give us about $6 million in cap space, so we want to go out and kind of sign some other players. We can do so with really no worries if we're going to go over or not. So, I mean, that'd be great if you could do this. And so that's what they did. Ryan's cap number now drops to $18.7 million or $18,705,882 for this year, while Indy has even more cap space to make other maneuvers this offseason. So obviously, more moves are going to be made from the Colts. They've been really kind of sitting in the back row, kind of waiting for everybody to kind of finish making their moves, kind of picking and plucking these people out, so there's just a little bit left for them to go grab, and there's a lot left for them to grab. Wide receivers, some marquee receivers out there for them to go get. We've mentioned them, obviously, OBJ, Jarvis, Julio, you get it, okay? The whole shebang, basically, if you will. And then you got Bobby Wagner still on the market. I mean, there's a lot of players that are still on the market that the Colts can go out and grab, and I believe they did this or created this $6 million in cap space just because they want to make sure, hey, we want a couple big-name guys in our organization because we're this close. I mean, we're this close for making a run to potentially put up a fight for the Super Bowl at least. We want to make the playoffs. And then once we make the playoffs, we want a chance at the ring. That is what the Colts organization wants to do, and they're right there. Their defense is phenomenal. I mean, Julian Blackmon, what's his name? DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard. If you get Tyrann Mathieu, that would be ridiculous. I mean, Bobby Wagner would be ridiculous. It sounds like he might sign with the Los Angeles Rams. Not 100% sure on that whole situation just quite yet. But that defense, I mean, Kenny Moore, Xavier Rhodes, that's a good defense. And then on the offensive side of things, they need to figure out their wide receiver positions. Okay, they have Michael Pittman Jr., T.Y. Hill is a free agent at this point. T.Y. Hilton might come back into the mix. Who knows? But they have some room to kind of make other moves, make splash signings, if you will. So the running back, Jonathan Taylor, they re-signed Mo Alley Cox, their tight end, who is a former basketball star in college, makes the transition to football. He's been phenomenal for him, very consistent, very talented tight end, if you will. So the Colts have made some moves. They're going to make more. I think they're going to be kind of in the news more lately than they actually have been in the past, just because of what they've been able to do here recently. So we get on the Colts there. Some kind of weird news, some unfortunate, not really unfortunate news, but some fuckery kind of is going on. Deshaun Watson, obviously he has 22 accounts or 22 allegations against him, where he already had to go to a grand jury for one county. There was 9 accusations against him, or 9 criminal charges against him, that the grand jury had to hear a bunch of evidence and hear from the accusers what happened, how it happened. Let me show me the evidence. We'll find out if we should kind of go further on this, if we should indict him, and so forth. So that actually ended up getting fucking slammed down. All right, we ain't doing this. There's not enough evidence. There's not enough to kind of keep this rolling on. Well, we all thought that was kind of over, including the NFL. The Cleveland Browns actually went and traded for his ass, signed him to a 5-year, $230 million, fully guaranteed contract. So right then and there, you're thinking, oh, okay, Deshaun Watson's kind of good to go. Okay, he still has to deal with the civil cases. That is a whole situation of itself. Obviously, he won't be facing too much jail time with a civil case, I don't think, or any. With the criminal cases or the criminal charges, he would have. But that has been, the grand jury decided not to indict him because they didn't find enough evidence to kind of keep this moving forward. But he still has the civil cases to kind of deal with. And so there's fans on both sides. There's like, oh, yes, we got Deshaun Watson. Yes, let's go. He wasn't indicted. This is my quarterback. Let's embrace him. And there's the other side that's like, oh, fuck this guy. All right, why would we sign this fucking scumbag to our team? I mean, there's two sides of it. Obviously, in my opinion, embrace the fucking dude until proven guilty or proven otherwise. Like I have always said you can't do anything about it. You don't live in his shoes. You don't know exactly what happened or if it is even true. I'm not saying it is or it isn't in any fashion. I'm just saying, like, nobody has a clue except for the grand jury, the accusers, and Deshaun Watson and his attorney. That's the only people that actually know what the fuck's going on, including the NFL, because they're doing their own investigation on the civil side of things to kind of figure out if they should suspend him or say, hey, you're good to go. All right, nothing's going to happen to you. But today, some interesting news kind of came out where, well, the Fox 8 I-Team has learned a second grand jury in another Texas county has convened to hear evidence against quarterback Deshaun Watson. Well, right off the bat, I was like, are you kidding me? Deshaun's fucking screwed. He is so screwed. That was my first thought right away. Like, uh-oh, this ain't good. Usually, you only need to hear it once. But apparently, this actually comes from one other or a different woman. So there was 9 criminal complaints in one county. They went to the grand jury, didn't indict him. Okay, kind of got pushed to the side. We're not indicting him, not enough evidence. But there's another woman in a different county that has a criminal charge or a criminal accusation against him. So the grand jury actually heard that yesterday. They were hearing all the evidence and kind of what all kind of went down and see if, all right, we might need to take this further, or yeah, same as the other 9. We're not doing this. There's not enough here to kind of, go forward with the case, if you will. So this is by Kimberly A. or Kimberly A. Martin, she is verified on Twitter. She says, I'm told that the Browns were also aware of the situation before they signed him. So they knew, I think even Watson knew, his attorney knew that, hey, there's possibly going to be one more criminal kind of accusation against me. We're going to have to go to a grand jury again. But once these 9 kind of get figured out, I think it's kind of like okay, we'll probably be just fine on this whole front. So she goes on and says, Watson's attorney, Rusty Hardin, says in the article that the complaint was filed by one of the women involved in the civil lawsuit cases. It's not a new complaint. So, this ain't new. This is one of the same women that was part of the civil cases, but there was a criminal accusation, obviously, there, so it had to get brought to a grand jury. And, well, the Brazoria County Grand Jury has declined to indict #Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson on any charges after being presented a single criminal complaint. This was a separate Texas grand jury considering one last charge after a grand jury in Houston rejected 9 criminal cases. Sounds like fugazi to me, if you ask me. I mean, they already rejected the first 9. Now they reject another one. Not saying he didn't do anything. But what I'm saying is, did he really do anything? You never know. You never know on that front. And I'm kind of going to stay away from it so I don't get myself in trouble. But 10 criminal cases now have been rejected to now, or have been declined to indict him. Now the civil cases are the only things we probably have to worry about. But you got to remember, it can go back to a grand jury for criminal cases if in the civil cases something gets brought up that wasn't brought up before in the criminal kind of cases for the the criminal case evidence, basically. So this whole situation is going to figure itself out. You know, it has to. Okay, that's a real thing. But like I will always stick to what I'm going to say right now is, if he did it, he's a scumbag. Don't want to see him in the NFL. But if he didn't do it, well, bad on them, basically, is how I'm going to put those two, or how I'm going to put that. So he's not going to be indicted for the criminal charges. Now it's going on to the civil cases. Those will get figured out, I'm sure, very shortly, especially with the season coming up. There's no way, if there's a suspension looming, that the NFL waits till halfway in the season to be like, oh yeah, now you're suspended for the rest of the season, stuff like that. That just won't happen. They'll do it at the beginning of the season. They'll get it done before the beginning of the season. So Deshaun Watson, obviously, T's and P's, man. Just good luck out there. And if you did it, you're a scumbag. So that's where I stand on that whole situation. I won't dive any further into it. But last but not least, the Packers, they had to trade away Davante Adams after signing Aaron Rodgers to a massive 3-year, $150 million extension. They were trying to get a deal done with with Davante Adams so he could stick around. They had a deal on the table. He said, nah, I'm going to the Las Vegas Raiders. He's out of the building. So what happens next? Well, they got to figure out their weapons, basically. They got to figure out who they're going to keep around to keep Aaron Rodgers a little bit happy, at least for the time being. One of them being their tight end, Robert Tonyan. The Packers have re-signed tight end Robert Tonyan to a 1-year, 3 3/4 or $3.75 million deal. It is worth up to $5.5 million. He gets a $1 million signing bonus, and I would say the rest of it. But it was kind of really weirdly worded, if you ask me. So I think they did good in re-signing Robert Tonyan. There are some good tight ends in this year's draft, but I just think you'd rather go with experience than going with something you have no idea what the hell you're going to get. Because you can get a really good tight end, or you can get a really bad tight end and then be screwed for the rest of the year. So they just decided to go with Robert Tonyan, who's coming off a torn ACL, I believe, from last year. He has a lot of proving. It's basically a prove-it deal. Hey, prove to me that you're the tight end of this franchise. right now, and they will pay you big money probably next year. So they lock up Robert Tonyan. Now their wide receiver room looks like Randall Cobb, Allen Lazard, Amari Rodgers. They'll have to bring in a wide receiver. That is a must. Okay, they'll figure that out. But then they got Robert Tonyan. They still have Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. Their defense is still flying around, ready to rock and roll. Rasul Douglas got locked up. They still have Jareer Alexander, Eric Stokes, who they drafted last year. Their linebacker crew, they could probably use a linebacker, if I would assume. Their defensive line looks fine, so the Green Bay Packers are okay, I think, for the time being. Yes, Devontae Adams leaving is a big and a massive hit to him, but that organization will be just fine. I mean, it's title town for a reason. They're always in the mix of things. They're always at least one or two, first place or second place in the NFC North, or they're always in the playoffs. So good on the Green Bay Packers for signing or re-signing Robert Tonyan to a one-year deal. So that is all I have for you guys today on the show. Not much popping off other than the Chiefs kind of landing not only Marquez Valdez-Scantling to a 3-year, $30 million deal, but they also land the 2023 NFL Draft, which is next year's draft. They have 12 picks in this upcoming draft. More to come in the next year's draft. Their team can only get better. Their future only looks brighter. I'm pumped for it. They'll be just fine with Deshaun Watson's situation getting figured out. It will eventually. Robert Tonyan gets locked up another year. Colts free up some cap space to hopefully make some more moves here in the next couple days. So, hey, like I said, that's it. That's all we got. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there. I got to go buy a new fucking bedding because my dog decided to shred mine to shreds, or, pretty much shred it apart. Big fucking hole. So that was great to come home to. So anyways, have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central Time, like always, with me and probably Y4 if I had to guess. So have a great one. And you just got your fix with the Wicks. Deuces, folks. Have a great one.